Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. This is an event sponsored by SupportLogic, and I'm thrilled to have with me Chris Romrell from NICE and Sariel, who is a Senior Director of Business Operations here at SupportLogic. This is one of a two-part series that we're doing with NICE, and we're letting you in and have a sneak peek with us as NICE has made some decisions recently in addressing some of their business challenges, and they're taking us on the journey with them of what they did, how they did, and in a couple months we'll come back and we'll share how that journey is going. And so thank you again for joining us. And we are going to start in with some Q&A for Chris in your role for Director of Continuous Improvement at NICE. A few questions to ask you, if you don't mind.
Let me jump right in there. So I was so good at Director of Continuous Improvement, and we did the SupportLogic project for tech support, that now I'm the global head of tech support for NICE.
Okay, congratulations.
I got a great project through, and now I have a great team to lead.
That's fantastic. And congratulations on that new role. That's very exciting.
Lots of excitement.
Okay. So let's talk about the why behind the journey that you're on. What business challenges led you to rethink what you were doing specifically around your knowledge strategy and your support delivery model?
Yeah, that's a great question. Within NICE, we've always had this challenge of multiple data sources, multiple knowledge sources. And so we had our customer help site, which is our primary documentation. Then we have our own Salesforce knowledge base, which is really where all of our kind of operational content goes and our procedures. And then we acquired a company called MindTouch. And so we started putting documentation and process and procedures there. And I've acquired a couple of companies and just got too much. And when you start asking customers to search in 4 or 5 different places, they're just not going to do it. And frankly, neither are our employees. And so we had a legacy provider doing federated search across sources, but it wasn't a very good experience. Like they would type in search, and again, federated search was very keyword dependent. So we were always going back to Salesforce and adding tags and trying to map the right content to the right question or the right source. And then it was always a list of links. And then the end user, both internally and externally, always had to click the link to figure out, is this the answer or is this the answer? And it did a reasonable job of trying to get the right answer to the top, but it just wasn't right. It wasn't nice. Our new CEO would say that wasn't nice. And we started working with our current vendor on a RAG style solution. And Google Gemini has told us that this is no longer the way, right? Customers expect an AI generated answer to help bring relevant knowledge to the front of the page. And we were working with them, and then we saw the press release with XFind, I think it was a year ago. And we went to the original seminar, and I started getting excited because we had, again, this huge success with SupportLogic. And when we started thinking about search and what SupportLogic did for our leaders, we started getting excited about what the XFind and the Resolve SX product could do for our customers. And so that was how we started this journey.
Fantastic. Here's a bit of trivia for you. This dates back to my time at TSIA. John Ragsdale and I used to do a lot of work on self-service. And do you know the average number of, Sariel, you don't get to answer, the average number of locations that people have to search?
I know for us, that number is internally it's 10 to 15.
Yeah. The industry average at the time was 17 to 19 different sources. If for a support engineer to be able to find what they were looking for to push customer issues forward, that's such a large number. It's crazy.
And it's such a matter of time trying to figure out where's this knowledge, and then trying to keep it synced and trying to operationalize the knowledge. It's near impossible.
And as you mentioned, going back into Salesforce or any CRM and tagging, we always found out, right? Tagging, you just grab whatever at the top of the list because that was the quickest way to close that case. So there were lots of issues that were tagged with the letter A, and then you move forward. Okay, so I love that you were willing to come here today and really talk about what was working, what wasn't working, what gaps and such. So when you got excited and you said, hey, look at this, we want to look at this problem differently, tell me a little bit about what you were envisioning for your customers. What did you want that experience to be?
We wanted them to have, we wanted to give them accurate knowledge. We work so hard to document the product, to capture the solution or the process, or even document the bug or the known issue. And we frankly, and we'll talk about some numbers here in a second, customers just weren't searching anymore. There was a case creation process and there was a search process. And so customers were, I think there's some numbers in my deck that's 25% of all cases are answered with us providing knowledge to the customer. 25%. And they weren't searching, just open cases. And so again, this need to provide customers with a good experience where they could express their question in native, natural language. The longer, the better, truthfully, and then give them a generative answer that was meaningful and successful and helped solve their question. That's the goal. And our legacy provider was short of that, and we couldn't get there. And that's why we got excited about SupportLogic and what Sariel's been doing with Precision Rack.
That's awesome. So did you decide early on when you knew those numbers, were you going to go after that 25%, or what did you say you were going to prioritize for these precise answers? Was there a set of cases, a set of issues? How did you make that determination?
We, again, from our world, we need to just create like a business justification, right? So we looked at 50,000 cases, and then we started looking how many were opened online, and we started coming into the ROI calculation. And we decided that if 3% of customers could search and find their answer, that we would deflect those cases. Those would cases where the customer got their answer. It was a natural, meaningful experience. And so that's where we started, was what's 3% of 50,000 per year and what's the cost per case? And we started working against that as our base must have. And then we started getting more excited because we're like, hey, what if we introduced a search as a customer was creating their case rather than just hoping they searched in the first place? And so the first place is we had to get our search done first. That was step one. And step two is now, how do we modify the customer case creation path to capture the customer's question or problem and then automate a search and then actually calculate the deflection, right? Not just this fuzzy math of these many searches means maybe these many cases weren't created, but actually measuring and capturing that value to the business, saying we are saving ourselves 500 cases a month.
Absolutely. I think there's probably people in the audience saying, share with us how you measure your deflection. That's a measurement in this industry that it doesn't matter where you go. Everyone has a different formula to get there. And in reality, you're measuring something that hasn't happened. So how do you do that?
So we talked about implied deflection, meaning can I correlate a search to a case? And so for us, we actually had to go back to our search data. And then it's so hard because we actually created our own metric called a search session, which means a person searching over a period of time, hopefully with related topics, and then looking at case and saying they searched, was there a case? And then trying to decide, was there a deflection? A search without a case is an implied possible deflection. They found their answer. They didn't need to open a case. They searched. They did open a case. That's an implied. They didn't find what they needed, and they came to us for help. And so we actually had to come up with because you couldn't just use searches to case. You had to correlate this into this created metric of session, and then look at the ratio of sessions to cases to say, what's our opportunity?
So this one, it's involved, but it's not. And bear with me as I ask you this, Chris. We have tried as an industry for years and years to get this right. And customers have gone through this with us, right? And they've ridden our peaks and valleys of new portal design, new search boxes, new knowledge bases. How are you bringing your customers on this journey that they're like, oh, you want me searching again? Did you have to do something behind the scenes with your broad customer base? Or was it just so appealing to them that they're like, oh, I want to give this a try? What did you do there?
We're still figuring this out a bit. So first and foremost, we wanted to ask ourselves, we couldn't just see how is this search quantity changing. We really wanted to get back to the session because in theory, with precision searching, they're going to search once, see their answer. They may not even click something. And so you start making assumptions about those activities. And so what we hope to see is that the actual quantity of sessions goes up. There's more value here. We can see more search activity. There's more value. This is people can find their answers, but the actual quantity of searches per session go down because you want to see like they typed their question in a meaningful way and the precision RAG delivered the generative answer in a way that was meaningful and helpful. And they were like, great, thank you. And there's so much going on there. But I think that's our start. And then we transition that into, can we force a search? Sounds a little punitive, but really it's capture a symptom and deliver that symptom back to the search tool and deliver back, hey, yeah, in fact, this is in our documentation. You can do this and this. And I think, again, the tool has been very meaningful in delivering what we think is a meaningful result.
That's great. So we've looked at it from the customer angle for a moment. Now let's go back into the agents or the engineers, because for years we have been drilling into agents, right? Knowledge base articles, creating content, linking content to cases and such. Are you seeing a tremendous change in traditional, I'll say, knowledge management practices that you've had? Can you tell us a little bit about that piece?
Absolutely. So one of the most exciting features that we're excited about with the Resolve SX product and the Assist product, again, we're bringing those two products together, is the ability to create new knowledge from the past. It's always been a challenge when you ask a very technical engineer whose time is very precious to say, now that you've solved that case, can you spend 10 minutes and write up a very good KB article about the solution so that we don't have to solve this again? And of course, the engineer is busy and they've got a backlog and they've got more pressing cases. And so it just wasn't going to work. And so KCS was really more adopted by our customer success team about finding processes and problems. And they're doing more KCS work than our engineers were. They're actually trying to help improve things. And so what we're seeing is, again, this vision of the future that we're on the journey of using our historical cases as a knowledge search, as a knowledge source, like incorporating that into the history so that when an internal user, an employee or an internal user is searching, they can actually say, oh, you know what? We solved the case last week. And here's what they did. Now, does it mean the engineer has to write some stuff down? Absolutely. And so there's still some good called case hygiene practices in play, but absolutely we're envisioning this new hybrid model where historical cases become part of our workflow, putting less effort on the engineer to actually write stuff down, and then this ability to use generative AI to create a new knowledge source, a new knowledge piece that could potentially be shared with a customer with less effort and better grammar, process, format is something that we're super excited about.
That's great. I know you think about it, the amount of things sitting in queues throughout the world waiting to be published, right? Because we're putting it in the template, we're looking at the grammar, we're doing all of these things. And yet these people are solving cases every single day with the case updates. And yet somehow when it moves to knowledge base, it has to take on this whole new spin of formalization and such. That's what I'm so excited about right now.
No, and we've looked at other providers saying like, how do we create AI knowledge bases? How do we migrate thousands of pages of Confluence data that is poor, old, outdated in some cases, and transition that into a modern living knowledge base. And it's always about the update. How do you get the most accurate information in front of your customers and employees with the least amount of effort? And I think that's the challenge of tomorrow.
Okay.
Unless Sariel says we're solving it today, then I'm excited again.
Awesome. I'm going to ask you one last question, and then Sariel, I'd love to transition to you and have you do a quick demo. And I do see some questions coming in, so I'd love to be able to address those questions to two of you after that demo. But Chris, tell me, the next 3 to 6 months, what are you looking at as far as the future? Where are you going next?
Excellent question. So we're doing a lot of things. We're trying to embed an iframe into Salesforce for internal search and make that knowledge more accessible to our TAMs, our professional services teams, just make knowledge easier because they're not going to search the 12 sources. Why are we giving our internal users a worse experience than our customers? Doesn't make sense. We're in the middle of this Salesforce Classic to Lightning conversion, which Sariel's been very gracious and patient to help us transition our knowledge sources, but that's really holding us up from really adopting the assist module. In my mind, the assist module is what I'm most excited about, which is where we're actually taking a case, generating a real-time summary of what's going on, and then pushing that summary into the search tool and getting back suggested steps to allow the engineer to solve the case. That is gold mine of money. That's a gold mine of opportunity. And as we start looking at our customer experience, it's about solving cases faster, getting it solved, getting it done, not having to depend on so much tribal knowledge and so much like this expert here knows this, and I need to maintain this like subtle internal black book of who knows what about what. Trying to release our engineers to be more effective and efficient and really use the knowledge the way it was intended. That's what I'm super excited about.
That's awesome. Great. Thank you. I'm gonna give you a preview of the last question that I'll ask at the very end, so you have some time to think about it. The one piece of advice you'd give to anybody on the line right now who's considering a similar shift, what is that one piece of advice that you'd give them around intelligent contextual support? Think about that. Sariel, would love for you to take control of the screen and give everyone a preview of kind of what we've been talking about here.
Absolutely. And I'm thinking that in this demo, we're going to be focusing on Resolve on the customer-facing portal. And I think maybe next time we'll focus on the assist Chris is excited about. But just to walk everyone through what we're seeing on screen, this is an iframe. This, in essence, can be embedded into any customer-facing flow. It's embedded into NICE's portal. We're embedding it into the NICE's cases creation form, and it can be embedded into any type of integration you would like. Really, all it's about is context and process. And these are two things that Chris noted. So what do I mean by context? You really want, if your customer is coming in with a question, you don't want them to be working hard. You want them to be getting their answers right when they need them, how they like them. And to that point, all they need to do is ask a natural language question, the exact question they have in their minds. It can be short, it can be long, it could be a case long question, it can be just a few words. Really let them decide how they want to ask their question, how they want to receive their data. And then starting from the left-hand side, we start with the recommended answer. So no longer a list of items from all over the place and starting to filter, starting to click links. Right away, you get the answer to your question. And it's pretty much a summarization of all the knowledge the company has in place, all the knowledge NICE has in place. In this case, this is based on SupportLogic data, but the same idea, right? And moving over from the left, then we have the referenced articles. So we gave our customer their answer. Now we want to explain to them what that answer is based on. And that is all the entire idea of RAG, of Retrieval Augmented Generation, is that we're retrieving a specific list of relevant items, and then we're generating the answer based on them. So that way we know for a fact that the answer is legit, the answer is relevant and is to the point. And here we're showing the exact specific items that we're basing our answer on. And we give all the information that could be useful on those items: the title, a snippet to the point from that item, the relevant metadata fields, what sources from, the ID of the item, etc. And then in addition to that, we still have the classic approach, right? We're not forgetting about the classic approach. So if we want to see all the relevant suggested items that could be relevant to this question that may not be referenced in the answer, I just click a button and I can see that entire list. And if we're talking about multiple sources, like Chris noted earlier, so many different sources that could be relevant to answering a specific question, they'll all be listed right here. And you can filter accordingly to the specific. If you know there's a specific source you want to be using, you can filter to that specific source. So we're giving really the customer the easier journey. They can do it as they like, in the manner that in the type of queries that they like. And that's what I mean by context. And this also plays into the assist side, right? The whole idea there is to take the entire context of a case and provide you with a relevant answer without having to push your way into a very specific keyword query that doesn't always work and can take a while to figure out. Then the second point is the process. So customers coming in with questions, it's not a single point of contact. It's actually a process, right? And we want it to be a process. If they have an issue, we want to make sure we're taking them through the entire journey until we solve it. If it's solved deflection-wise in the portal, great. If it's solved by deflection in the case creation form, that's great as well. But we want to make sure that it's not just abruptly ending there and that they're actually getting what they need. And if it becomes a case, then we help the agent assist the customer on that end as well. But also here we have obviously the ability to copy the answer and paste it wherever you would like, but we also have this upvote and downvote buttons. And what those do is give the customer the ability to provide us with feedback, right? This is not a single point of contact. This is a continuous process, right? Did this answer my question? And you can add in additional details. And then this goes back to the team, right? If they're very happy with the question, but maybe they would like some different ways of presenting the data, we would want to know that, etc. If they want longer answers, shorter answers, with links, without links, these are things we want to learn about our customers and how they would like their knowledge to be presented. Same goes with if the answer was not to the point, right? We want to know that as well. So to summarize, really the whole idea of the way we built our approach with Resolve is to enable it to any customer journey. As I said, it's an iframe, can be embedded anywhere. B, to enable the customer to reach knowledge, to find knowledge as they would like in their journey. And C is really to see this whole experience as a process, as not as a single point of contact. That's what this is built to do.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sariel. I love all of this. I've been a fan of yours for years now. And now that you're part of SupportLogic, it's just everything good coming together in one place. I'm thrilled. So we do have a couple of questions that have come in. Chris, I'm going to ask you one of them. And I think that you can see the question too, but with AI emerging, how does one move from typical technical support to IT customer support automation? Because we work on tickets on a daily basis and can have interesting ideas to what can be automated. Want to take a stab at that one?
I love this question. So first, I think it's really about envisioning a better experience, giving your permission to get creative. Are you giving your users permission to use ChatGPT? What are your policies? Understanding the art of the possible. The person who replaced me in the project manager role, he's our AI innovation director within our services organization. So we've actually dedicated a full body to just envisioning the art of the possible. And so as you start thinking about what are the things the engineers are doing that is not engineering, it's things like case comments and summaries and pulling this log. Now, reviewing the log is an engineer task, but going to get it and pulling it out is busier and not as valuable. And so I think envisioning the art of the possible, giving yourself permission to be creative, trying some things out, testing some things out, looking at some tools for automation, which are rapidly emerging in the marketplace, and looking to your great partners like SupportLogic who can help you on this journey. So I think that's really, I spend about 20% of my time thinking about the strategy and the execution and AI, and how do we converge AI with our engineers to be the best of both, right? To be nice. And so giving ourselves that permission to be creative, I think, is really first and foremost. And then giving your engineers and your staff some tools and some policies, some guide frames about how rapidly you want to do this, what tools they can use, what questions they have. We have a list of 100 AI ideas that we could be distributing across our services org. And then we're prototyping them. If we could do this, then what could we do here? And how do we push something into our CRM or pull something out of our case flow? Can we fire an API and query a search with SupportLogic? Like all of these things start coming together and you're like, wow, we could really do something amazing. And then start doing it. It's not easy, but the tools are dramatically better and the art of the possible is here today.
Yeah, that's awesome. Quick comment on that, creating a safe place for those employees to come forward and say, hey, what if we did this? What if we automated this? I think that is something that we as an industry really need to do, because for so long, support has been routine, right? Do what I say, we measure this. Now let's really open up to, like you said, the art of the possible. One last one I'm going to sneak in here real fast. How do you determine the quality of the case data that you're using for your engineers to reuse? That's a big one, right? Was that a good case? And it should be reused again. So Sariel or Chris, are you willing to jump in on that one before we close out today?
I can start.
Yeah, go ahead.
Part of the magic behind Resolve SX is the precision element, which is I don't have to tell it. The tool, the AI, the algorithm, in conjunction with the rules and the intelligence and the RAG and the vector databases, everything behind the scenes is really helping to curate the data. And then ultimately it's around customers thumbing up and viewing how do we incorporate the customer activity against the system to inform the system and train the system of what knowledge is good. And then also allowing your engineers to, again, more easily with generative AI, create new knowledge in a way that's easy and seamless. But I'll pass it over to Sariel for a better answer.
Give it a short answer, which is I don't envision support as a totally automated process. I think that's a wrong approach, especially in our type of industry. There's always a human in the process who needs to take a look and make sure that what they're pushing out there is true and is relevant. And I think AI, what it's doing is just enabling the humans to do it much more efficiently, right? Bringing them the knowledge they should be looking at, helping them write it up quicker, and that, but at the end of the day, the human needs to make sure that what they're pushing is relevant.
Right.
Yeah, one of the things we describe is AI allows your best agent to help all of your agents, right? Again, the AI is learning from best practices and it's learning and adjusting and pivoting to what's possible, what's there. And so again, the system is self-involved, self-educating, and is getting better every search and every case.
Great. Thank you for taking the time to answer that. Sariel and Chris, it's been great to have you with us today. To the audience, thanks again for joining us. Chris, thank you for sharing your journey to date on your knowledge evolution. I love it. I love the story. Can't wait to see you back here if you'll still join us in a couple of months to give us the how's it going today view of the world. Sariel, as always, you're a pleasure. And thank you for sharing with everybody what it could look like and does look like already for some of the industry.
Absolutely. Thank you,
Thank
Judy.
you.